to do a discussion on something that I think is really important, and Zena figured out the language that I was trying to get to in a really succinct way.
Yeah, well, and this is something that Jess and I have had to deal with in our personal relationship, and also that we find that a lot of people have questions about or don't really understand some of these concepts fully because no one teaches you this stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, so the thing we wanted to talk about today was power dynamics and the ways in which they are sort of naturally occurring in relationships or can be artificially thrown into relationships, as well as the ways that someone can mitigate them. There we go. There. Trying to get you more frame. There you go.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to also be big enough in frame too.
Well, you're bigger than me right now. So when I say power dynamics, what I'm referring to is the way in which a relationship can have functioning aspects of it that will change the way equal distributions of power or chores or various other things will basically work out.
Yeah, power in this sense could manifest in terms of chores, economics, right?
Just personal experience.
Sorry, personal finance. Yeah, personal experience.
The most positive of these of which could be as simple as just difference of experience, right? If you're somebody who's been trans and out longer and you're dating a partner who's also trans, there may be a difference in the power dynamic because they may have a much greater understanding of being trans, right? Just basic stuff there. The worst of this gets into where we get into age dynamics and issues like that. I made a joke in a previous segment about the fact that, my experience with a lot of pagan community is a lot of 40-year-old guys trying to date a lot of 20-year-old girls, but there's a truth to that. And the reason why we look side-eyed at that is not just because of the age difference, but because the age difference is actually signifying an incredibly large difference of power. In that circumstance where, that's a bit hyperbolic, but not that much. And it happens. And the problem is that in these circumstances, why is that a problem? Well, the person's not fully developed. As we've talked about before, development doesn't really finish until 25, 26, and even then there's still some questions.
Well, it opens up for cases of abuse, coercion. It doesn't put these people on an equal footing, right, with equal ability to make choices and decisions, right? So your agency is affected in this, okay?
Yeah, like a good example of that is that in the scenario I just gave, if you're a 40-year-old guy and you suck with women and don't really want to have a woman who has experiences or her own stuff, you pick a younger girl because A, you're more likely to be one of the first people there. Yes, they care about that for some reason. And two, because her personality is more malleable. Think about it. This is exactly why conservatives, are all for child marriage. This is why religious groups have been for, marrying girls as young as 14 or 15 out. This is why these things exist, because they're using a power dynamic. If you're a guy who is already financially successful and you're like 35 years old and you're dating an 18-year-old who is not even started college yet, I hate to break it to you, there are a number of ways that can go wrong. Because the issue is that even with the best of intentions, and again, I would be really curious about those intentions, but even if I assume good faith, the problem you get into is what things are you leveraging to make that relationship attractive? Because the difference in experience means the level of actual interaction, such as things you both like, things you both enjoy, may not be there. So what is the things you're using or leveraging to be able to do this? And this is the problem with power dynamics, is they can be used as ways to control people. They're in the situation we're talking about. For example, if the guy has all the finances, the girl goes to live with him, spoiler alert, now she has a hard time getting out because all of her finances are tied through him. You see this in marriages too. And this is the thing is that there's other kinds of power dynamics. The age one is the obvious one, right? We kind of get that intuitively.
Well,
go ahead.
Before we move on from age, I think it's worth noting, yes, just used a very large bracket as an example, But even when you're dealing with smaller brackets, this is still something to consider, right? Somebody in their 30s, right? Maybe getting with somebody, early 20s. You're still going to need to go, okay, wait a minute. There's other structures that could be affecting this relationship here.
Yeah. Well, and to kind of be 100% transparent, so my relationship with Zena is one that I have to be very directly aware of with power dynamics because Zena is 12 years younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing here is that when we got together, there was a very large conversation about how to address those power dynamics, because being a person with a personality disorder that regularly has the ableist projection on it of it being manipulative, my fear is that there are ways that I could be that thing. And so what I wanted to do is we had a conversation about it, like, okay, how do you address those things? Because there are differences in my experiences. There are differences in our dating habits and our previous relationships. There are differences in the ways in which, my experiences are varied. Like, Zena's had, a handful of relationships. I've had several long-term relationships, been previously married and widowed. Like, there's a level to which, even just dealing with that stuff, even just having my graduate, that puts me in a different place. And that's something I want to be really clear with, is that, so power dynamics of the age thing is something we're very familiar with because it's something we've had to address in our relationship. And a lot of the ways we do that is, we don't put me in this place where I'm the one making decisions. Often Zena and I try to come to things on a more egalitarian level.
Mm-hmm.
Often if I'm not available for work, Zena's usually the one making most of the decisions.
Yeah.
So there's ways in which that happens. But there can be other power dynamics. One that comes to mind, and this is something I've seen in various situations, is, and unfortunately it's happened to me, is somebody's in a really shitty situation. And this happened with one of my exes, where they were in a really bad situation. Their parents were really shitty. And they're like, I need to get out or something bad is going to happen. To which I would run and get them, and they would come stay with me. Well, inevitably, because we lived together, or at least they were staying with me temporarily, we would start to play around, and it would start to become something. And inevitably, these always became relationships. And that's the thing is that this is another level we talk about, where the age difference actually is one variation, but another variation is the scenario where a person is running from something, and the person appearing to helping them either has ulterior motives, or maybe they don't have ulterior motives, but maybe that's the direction it goes because due to forced proximity and a number of other factors, including the person maybe feeling guilty or feeling like they owe you something, like, we get into some interesting questions of coercion. And again, I want to be clear that this is something that I've tried to avoid in my relationships, but I want you guys to really think about these, because when you're entering a new relationship, what baggage are you bringing in, but also what power dynamics are you bringing in?
Yeah.
A good example for me is another one is education. Like, Zena's incredibly educated, has 3 separate associate's degrees, is incredibly bright. I have a graduate degree in one discipline, 2 technically if you add the philosophy degree. But we come from very different schools of education, and because of that, there are things about, say, psychology and counseling and things like that I know a great deal about. I have to be careful, and I've not always been great at this, but I have to be careful not to wield that stuff in a way that attempts to exert that power with Zena. And then Zena has to be careful. The same thing, for example, with the education stuff. Like, there are things I'm just not aware of, or art or things like that, where if we're having a conversation, I kind of have to defer to them, but that deference needs to be acknowledged, if that makes any sense. So is this tracking for chat? Are you guys getting this? You're not really posting a whole lot, so I'm just trying to see where the hell y'all are at. Because I want you guys to really start thinking about these power dynamics and what to look for, but also ways to address them.
Yeah, I was going to say, things that I think are really important to look for is any time, a partner or potential partner has unstable housing or unsafe housing. Those can be big ones. I have seen and heard stories of people running from, abusive parents or parents who aren't LGBT friendly into another situation. Okay. And yeah, it will get them out of that one with the parents, but what else are they hopping into? Sometimes that goes well. Sometimes the relationship doesn't go well, fine. And other times, no, you might find an abusive actor, okay? Or somebody who is acting in an abusive manner. It was really rough because one of the local groups that I was part of, outside of I was in my 20s, okay? I think, try not to dox myself or give anything away here.
1 second. Base Jedi, thank you so much for the super chat at $9.99. We deeply appreciate it.
Oh, nice. Cool. Thank you.
Go ahead, love.
And we, as a lot of us were piecing out later, there was a lot of young people here and then like a few older people. Okay. And no, we kind of picked out, okay, wait a minute, why are the young people here? Well, a lot of us were kind of having issues at home or, didn't really have a whole lot of self-esteem. And no, it absolutely opened us up for what we thought was, self-confidence in classes and stuff, but it did not turn out that way. No, a lot of skeezy stuff was revealed later, stuff that, some of us dodged, some of my friends didn't. And it sucked because the front that this was put up that we thought we were getting into was something that would help us, right? That would be really cool. And so it's easy for these people to come in and act like, they're great, they are helpful, they're fine. When in reality, that's not the case, right? And so I think anytime, so that's one example. Yeah, point being, the example is anytime I think there's a partner with unstable housing, you got to kind of look at that and go, okay, what needs are also in here that somebody's trying to get met? All right, because that does affect things.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so here's the reason why power dynamics are problematic, is that power dynamics unexamined can be accidentally leveraged in a way that are harmful. Power dynamics that are actively used to do that leveraging are abuse. So the problem is that you have to ride this line very well. There is a way in which my experiences are valid, and I have more of them than Zena. Does that make me better than Zena? No, not in its fucking slightest. But what it does do is it does bring up the issue of how do we validate my experiences and acknowledge that expertise of my own experience in my own life while simultaneously not wielding that as a cudgel against shutting down anything Zena's experiencing.
Yeah.
Right? And Beyond Safe Words, one, good to see you in chat. Also, cults and high control groups are good at preying on those power differentials. They absolutely are. When we talked about the actual definition of gaslighting, this has been a regular thing. We talk about the way people will use manipulation and power difference to control. The acts of both love bombing, that is to pour on admiration and things like that to get the person feeling connected, and then suddenly social deprivation, the other half of it, of love bombing.
Nope, been there.
Yep. Followed
on those ends of things.
Yeah. Followed by the absolute twisting of the narratives and twisting of the person's intentions leads to a situation where you're deferring to the other person. That's what gaslighting does. It essentially hands the control to the person doing the gaslighting. It's also one of the reasons why when people call it out and call it out wrong, I'm now starting to look at that as its own form of manipulation, because when they call out gaslighting in that format, the issue I get into is it often seems like what they're trying to do is, rather than say we disagree or don't have the same memories of these events, what they're trying to say is because you disagree with my memories must be somehow sacrosanct, which anyone who knows neurology and the study of memory knows this is just not the fucking case. But there's a way in which, because I don't remember this thing specifically, then there is, you must be doing something intentionally other than I have a very different memory. Like, it's immediately a bad faith act. I think if you're going to call out gaslighting, you need to actually demonstrate the actual behavior that's happening, or talk to someone who's actually professional and can, acknowledge those abuse symptoms. But my point is that parasocial relationships are a power dynamic. This is why, generally speaking, I would be very hesitant to play around with someone who is just one of the fans of our channel. I just wouldn't. There's people. There are obviously probably some level of exceptions to the rule given certain situations, but we try. I try to be very careful with that. The people I do occasionally flirt around with are either people I've met through Twitter, people I've met through other servers, or like literally members of other like high-ranking members of other servers.
Yeah,
like,
other people that have similar positions, even if it's in another server.
Yeah. And so that's a sorry, I had to stretch. So that's a thing is like, would somebody who is really, really cool and really got along with me, would that be a big hard no? Probably not, but it would be a thing of acknowledging their behavior, acknowledging the situation, and figuring out the best course of action rather than just immediately go with any of my guts or my feelings on the matter because because I think that there's ways that you have to be very careful about wielding parasocial stuff. I don't know at a core level what y'all think of me. And generally, anyone watching this video, the general experience I get are one of three. Incredibly positive, incredibly negative, or meandering and arguing about a particular point, but we may actually not be arguing because they didn't listen to the video right. It depends. But that's the thing I noticed is that with the parasocial stuff, there are people who have like left our community who now have a negative parasocial relationship and actively just swing in to dislike a video or actively swing in to do various things. And it's like, okay, that's fine. That comes with the territory. But those parasocial engagements, both the positive and negative, are very difficult to work around because the person you think I am and the person I am may have some similarity, but I don't know if they're entirely the same because I can't be inside your fucking head. Thus, I have to be careful of that power dynamic. Does that make sense to you guys? Like, are you seeing Jessica or are you seeing Jess of TGT? Because those are two different things. Right? So these are things that like I think about when we talk about power dynamics is how do you wield power well? This is actually one of the things I really like from Vosh is unlike a lot of people who seem to like fucking squirrel away from power and get uncomfortable, he's very clear, like politics is about having power. It's about being able to do things. And guess what? You have to learn how to use power effectively. In my case, I don't wield my power to try to control my partner, nor does Zena do the same to me. We just don't. Are there times where we get our wires crossed or we disagree about something or we get really upset about something? Often, sometimes daily, because either we're dealing with chronic illness and our spoons are low or because one of us reacted. Happens to the best of us. But we try to have rules in those relationships. And one of the rules is in those interactions is you don't wield your experience or your education or your memory. That's been a thing that's been a big one is like with me having ADHD, my memory is actively bad. Zena's memory up until like the last few months has been, when they're not in brain fog, their memory is fantastic. And there's a way that somebody who is like quasi neurotypical, because Zena is now diagnosed, or at least was quasi put in that position, could actually, if they wanted to, wield that as leverage against me because I couldn't gainsay those memories. Right? That's a thing to be aware of. So,
well, in this, I mean that. So, neurotypical and neurodiverse, I that power dynamic can go both ways. Okay. In one way, you know, hey, I'm neurotypical and I can't remember all of this. I can't really do these things on my own. I need help. I need X, Y, Z, right? You know, or hey, I can apologize, but not actually like change my behavior. Okay, that. You
said neurotypical. I assume you're talking about neurodiverse people right now.
Yeah. So being on the other end of that stuff, though, no, it can get really messy trying to work with all of that.
Because how do you address those things from an integrity perspective while also not being ableist?
Yes. And there's times where, like, even we in our household need to watch out for, okay, Zena's got memory. I've got notes. I would remember 8 different appointments. I could handle, you know, all sorts of things. And I would end up being the memory center for not just me, but the whole house. Okay? And that's a really rough place to be in. And we kind of have had to work to address that, to lessen that on me, okay? Because it means that the other two people really have to work, you know, to work on the independence and work on their, you know, personal stuff to kind of lessen some of that, because I can't hold on to all of that. Like, that's a thing. You know, so there's ways that this goes both ways, right? And like Jess said, you know, we definitely have to watch out for the moments when we don't remember things the same way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, like, you know, I've talked about this before, but like, I think one of the things that people can do is they can use your diagnoses against you. One of the ones that I'm really sensitive to is somebody claiming that I am being manipulative or trying to do something that I know intentionally I'm not. Because as a person with BPD, I am very used to people making those accusations, and I have been in previous relationships that I would now code as at least semi-abusive that had issues with this.
I gotta be honest, even on my end, I am very cautious of people. Because when Jess was dealing with mental illness, there were people that thought this was abusive towards me. Okay? All right? And they would react really strangely because they didn't want to say it, but that's, you know, finding out later. And I'm like, no, my partner's just having a panic attack. A panic attack is not abuse. Like, I've done that. All right? Been there, done that. That's not what's happening here. And so watching out for other people, labeling this as something it isn't. That's why Jess and I both kind of advocate for being accurate with language. It is possible for, you know, a relationship to be harmful or toxic to both people and not necessarily be abuse. Or if somebody's dealing with extreme mental illness and you're having a hard time with that, like, that is a thing, but that doesn't make that abuse necessarily. They're separate things, okay?
Yeah.
So, I do like what Beyond Safe Words was saying. We want to get into some of maybe like the positive ways or how you handle this in a good way. Does that sound good?
Yeah, let's do it.
So Beyond Safe Words is saying, there are ways of ethically mitigating those dynamics when you're not in an abuse dynamic, but that requires everyone in the dynamic to be acting in good faith.
True.
Word. Yep. I think the biggest thing too is acknowledging it.
Yeah, I think speaking it out loud, I think running from it. This is what I see a lot with the age difference power dynamic is a lot of people get hyper abused with it because, I mean, let's be honest. Like, I'm not a big fan of Leonardo DiCaprio dating a bunch of super young women and just trading up every time they hit a certain age. But I'm also not entirely sure shaming somebody is the greatest way to get that conversation out there, because it seems like it just puts it more into shadow, right?
Sorry, that was really
That
loud.
was very loud. But it puts it very much into shadow, right? Because it becomes the thing they want to avoid and get away from. They disown it. It's the thing not to be spoken. Rather than just acknowledging, like, yeah, you know, I like younger women. I'm very careful about these power dynamics and not to be an asshole with them. But instead it just turns into, yeah, don't say anything about it because that's, because it's a shame that I don't want to actually acknowledge. Names are powerful. Words are powerful. I know we talk about words as though, you know, from a socially constructed perspective, they don't matter. But they really do matter when regards to trying to give something a face.
Well, when you need a language for how to communicate something, right? That's, yeah. No, you need that. I think it's asking the unseen questions. Or not unseen questions, like asking the things that you're dancing around. You know, if there's something that you're kind of avoiding or something that you're not really saying, or why is this way? I think it's worth it, you know, giving voice to those things and figuring that out. There's a lot of stuff in my past that took me a while because people, one, didn't really hear me. It wasn't until I got with Jess that, like, oh, no, the things that Zena are saying is actually fucked, and no, there's actually something there.
Night, Leo child.
Night.
Yeah, no,
So I guess looking out for avoidance, I think, is the way to say that.
yeah, Zayade has a really good one there, which is, contra-wise, there's a few individuals who have learned to use their diagnosis as an excuse to continue behavior. Yeah, there are people who will have a diagnosis or a status as a marginalized person or whatnot to weaponize that in ways to wield power. We see this actually in the online left a lot, where we don't ask the question of which argument is actually right based on the data and based on the most reasonable perspective. We tend to shun identity politics while also deferring to them often. Like, as I've said before, a trans woman experience is absolutely something to be listened to, but it doesn't mean she's necessarily always right. There are trans women who instinctively we know are not right. Blair White is a good example. Rose of Dawn is a good example. These are people whose experiences are valid, but they're through a very, very like narrow lens that doesn't really meet the rest of the online space. Beyond Safe Word says cough cough, Professor Flowers cough cough. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When you're wielding your identity as a way to justify atrocity, I take issue with that. Even as I said in that previous video, and specifically the Lindsay Ellis video, the argument about just because someone comes from a marginalized group who has been harmed and abused through medicalization, yes, that sucks. Yes, that's awful. But that historical trauma is not a justification not to get vaccinated. Because to do so is actually taking the harm that was done to you and then spreading it out to others. This is the thing I get into, is that we don't ever look at the harm of a thing. We never look at the way people wield their power. We just defer to them based on whatever our value system is. If you're conservative, it's a white guy. If it's, leftist, it's whoever has the most narrow variation of identity, and often still is in and of itself bigoted. It's really weird. But my point is that, yeah, you can take any kind of social status or whatnot and wield it in a certain circumstance to have a lot of power. You see this in queer situations where, if you have a local queer group that's in like, a local, real meat space place, you will have a shit ton of drama come up because people will be trying to wield power over one another.
Yeah.
It's really weird. And that's the thing, is like, it's something we constantly watch for in our server because I don't want anyone to ever have that. Not because I want to wield unlimited power. I do. It's my fucking server. But the fact of the matter is that I don't want to ever have that be a thing, and I don't ever want somebody to gain enough social clout to where they feel like they can weaponize some aspect of that. That's happened a number of times. We've had people who have said we are all sorts of terrible things because we told them no, or they didn't read the rules. Seriously. Like,
Beyond Safe Words, that's all part of the social ecologies we're swimming in.
True.
Yep.
God, what I've been called... Let's see, I've been called arrogant, racist, ableist. I know Redacted still refers to me as a TERF, I guess, which is a weird one. But that's the thing, is that, look at that dynamic. We can say, look, Jess had this big argument and won against Redacted, and guess what? I did, but look at the power differential. I am not some high and mighty powerful person. Our channel has like less than 3,000 subs. The power differential is not based on just social clout. It's also based on expertise and things like that. So we get into some really weird discussions about that kind of stuff when we talk about, especially with other content creators. Holy shit, does that get difficult. I get frustrated beyond all words when too many frickin' people use, psychological terms incorrectly. It's insanity.
So we actually have a playlist for all the videos with Beyond Safe Words, by the way, because that's super their jam, is the social ecologies. If you want to type in chat, a little blurb what that is, what your project is. My brain's not working properly right now.
Real quick, just so chat has this. God, nothing's loading fast.
I've got a rant. I got a thing, though. I got an axe to grind on this one.
All right, go.
Being emotional, sad or upset or angry, and clean anger, okay, not like the violent kind, does not invalidate your opinions or your arguments.
True.
Just done. Like, seriously. The amount of, like, hey, you're really upset, so you must be the person in the wrong. No, that's not the case. Like, you need to be able to dig more and actually understand more. Okay? That one gets me a lot, especially when, like, dealing with, like, PMDD. Like, no, my emotions might be kind of out of whack, but the words, and so, unfortunately, the thing that I have to get people to understand is that you need to listen to the words that I'm telling you right now, because, no, I do have emotions in my body that are going to happen. Like, I can't hide all of the micro expressions, okay? But people do this all the time to women anyways. You get a period, so guess what? We're not going to listen to you because you're going to be angry or some shit. Like, no. If somebody is angry and there's a reason and they've got arguments and good arguments for something going on or asking for a behavior change, no, fucking listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'll say is that, yeah, the problem is that, like, you have to weigh out arguments in a way where you're not necessarily trying to, like, shut the person down through fallacious means. That's what that is. You're basically, when you do that, claiming tone policing. Because the person's upset and angry about a thing. And again, I'm not going to justify, violence, but if they're upset about a thing, that doesn't mean they're wrong. There's actually a thing that really sucks about having borderline is because my emotions tend to be over the top. It's a very easy way to shut me down. And again, so these power dynamics really do have effects on us. And I think they're things to really watch out for. I've put in both lit chats, by the way, the playlist for Beyond Safe Words. If you want to watch some of the interviews we've done with her, she is awesome. We love her to death. If you're watching this as the video, then you can find that in our playlist selection, right? But I think for now, I feel like we kind of covered this. Is there any other kind of things around power dynamics that we want to kind of talk about, or is there anything else that you want to kind of go off on?
I guess we get some food for thought. Power dynamics can happen like in any situation. Like, it doesn't have to be just, the big categories that we think of, like age or experience. Part of the reason why, like, parents and, teens transitioning to adulthood is because that power dynamic is shifting greatly, in that space, right? That can cause a lot of conflict as you're trying to figure out what that looks like. And again, not all power dynamics are bad, but do acknowledge them, do talk about them and explore them. So
yeah. So with that, we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.
If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, consider donating to us. You can support us on our website, transgirltherapist.org. You can also help us on our Patreon, link below, or you can become a member here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching.